That's funny.
All righty. People coming in. Great to see you all. As you're popping in, if you guys feel like you want to, go ahead and drop where you're checking in from and the organization you're a part of. It's always fun to see that in all the different locations. Oh man, people are really coming in. This is awesome. So good to see you all. All right, we'll give everybody probably another 30 seconds to start filing in and we'll go ahead and get started. All right, we got Atlanta. Big win for the Falcons
Oh,
last night.
I should be better about following the local
Oh, that's okay.
teams.
But Olympia, Washington, great. California, Michigan, Airborne United, beautiful. California, Texas, Montreal, very cool city.
Hmm.
St. Pete, I have a lot of family in St. Pete. A lot of the Miano clan lives in St. Pete.
That's funny. Maybe it's your cousin. You should
It could be.
connect
It could
later.
be. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. While people are still coming in, this is really fantastic. So, all right. So, thank you all for joining today's very special event. My name is Chris Miano, and I'm the founder and CEO here at MemoryFox. I am super pumped about today's event because getting in front of new audiences using Google Ads is something each of us, from Tech for Good to frontline nonprofit organizations, we're all always trying to improve on, right? And so I know our guests have a lot of information to share today, so I'd love to get started. First, I would like to introduce the wonderful Carly Euler. Carly Euler is the marketing director here at MemoryFox. She comes from the nonprofit world, ready to elevate the hundreds of nonprofits in the MemoryFox community by telling stories ethically and authentically. She has previously held positions at various nonprofits, including the Wiley Network, the Breast Cancer Coalition, the CODA Support Foundation, and the Kenya Lacrosse Association. She's been specializing in marketing, communications, special events, and fundraising. Carly is the creator of the 2023 Ethical Storytelling Report, which hopefully you guys have all downloaded. If not, I'll drop a link later. And she relishes the opportunity to share actionable ethical storytelling practices with the nonprofit community. Welcome, Carly. Great to have you, of course. And now I'd like to introduce our next guest, Jessica King. Jessica King is the business lead at Getting Attention, where she helps nonprofits get the Google Ad Grant and manage it effectively to get the most from it. Prior to her work at Getting Attention, Jessica worked at nonprofits and in higher education, where she focused on communications and digital marketing. Most recently, she worked in search engine optimization in the mission-driven sector. Welcome, Jessica. Great to have you.
Excited for our chat today.
Yeah. This session is being recorded, and you will all receive a copy within 24 hours via email. As a reminder, today's agenda will be broken down into three parts. First, Carly will explore the concept of out-of-the-box nonprofit storytelling with you, as well as prompts that spark great stories using real examples from nonprofits such as yourselves. Second, Jessica will share how you can use the Google Ad Grant to find and drive engaged audiences to your stories, as well as tips to getting started and making your ads more effective. Pumped about that. And third, we'll open it up to questions from the audience. So please do not hesitate to drop them in the chat and we will get them at the end. Then stick around if you'd like to see some behind the scenes of how MemoryFox and Getting Attention works. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. Carly, lead us off.
Okay, I'd love to. And as always, the sharing of the screen, there's always, a couple steps you have to do. So let me just make sure that I hit everything correctly. Okay, I think that should work. Um, all right. I think we've got, oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I did not share. Let me do that one more time. Let me get that. And there we go. Okay, so thank you all for joining me today. I love presenting on this topic. Jessica and I have been talking about this topic for like a really long time, so I'm really excited that it's finally here and that we're finally gonna share some storytelling and ad grants together. And I'm also looking forward to learning from Jessica. So this is just really great. But before I hop in, I first want to share with you, why is storytelling so important anyway? There's actually been quite a lot of research out there that proves just how great storytelling is for nonprofits. So let's check out some stats. First and foremost, you're going to raise more funds. According to Classy, they found that fundraising campaigns that incorporate video receive 114% more funding than campaigns that don't. So, that's not 10%, it's not even 50%, it's 114%. So it's really just kind of something you can't really argue against. Second, it is more memorable. So a lot of people have redone this study, but this particular one comes from the Stanford Graduate School of Business. They found that stories are remembered up to 22 times more than just facts alone. And finally, I think we kind of all inherently maybe know this, but it is what people want these days. So Sprout Social, they do really great reports on how people interact with different social media platforms. And they found that 62% of social media users said that they've become more interested in a product or a brand after seeing it in the form of a short form video. So, simply just sharing the video made somebody more interested in that brand. So that's really great stuff. And yeah, like I said, this is kind of something we all sort of generally understand how great video storytelling is. At this point, we probably are all on some sort of social media platform where we like to scroll through videos, and maybe they're funny, maybe they're about missions that we love. I think just it is a little ironic to explain the power of video by talking about statistics. So I do want to share this video from our friends at Kids Health Connections with you. And just let me know if the sound, I believe the sound should work, but let me check.
No, it's not coming through.
Not coming through? Okay, I wondered about that. 1 second. Let me see if I can fix that. Sometimes it works perfectly, sometimes it does not. You know what? I'm not sure. It's not really giving me that option, but that's okay. We'll just keep going anyway. But we have this
The
really
beautiful
great video.
video.
Yeah, this really great video that came from Kids Health Connections. And it's this wonderful example of how they are showing the success of their program in real time by asking a family while they're actually in the program how wonderful it is. And we just love this video because it's such a great form of a success story here. So anyway, this is kind of the traditional example of nonprofit storytelling, right? So we're talking about getting the story directly from the program participant and using it to raise more funds. It's probably a strategy that many of you already use. It's something you're probably pretty familiar with. But today I actually want to explore a concept that I like to refer to as out-of-the-box nonprofit storytelling. So instead of just thinking about the stories of our program participants, I want to now consider all the perspectives that you have in your community. So your donors, your volunteers, your leadership, your board members, your corporate sponsors, all types, all of their staff members as well, all the different things that they do that make their jobs unique. Those also are important stories that you can be telling. But it is one step further than that. So those are all the different types of inputs that you can have from your community, but also nonprofit storytelling isn't just about raising more funds anymore. There's so many other things that you need to consider when it comes to finding and sharing great stories. So for example, you might want to use storytelling to educate about your mission, maybe actually perform your mission or perform your programs. You can facilitate awareness campaigns. You can enhance trust and transparency with your whole community by showing some behind the scenes stuff. So there really is kind of this, all of these ways that you can now harness different inputs to inform different outputs. So that is kind of the concept of out of the box nonprofit storytelling. And I don't want you to take my word for it. I have some examples for you that are some unique ones directly from our storytellers. So first, I want to share this example from our friends at the Community Foundation Martin St. Lucie. So they were trying to find a way to have a more unique, dynamic way to share thank yous with their donors. So they actually asked everyone that was participated in their scholarship program to go ahead and film just a quick thank you video while they were experiencing their favorite thing they did this semester. So you can see this this little clip going by here, but there you have people that are out in the community, they're in classrooms, they're in laboratories, they're in their dorm rooms. They are in all these different things, this full spectrum of experiences that they got over the semester. And they're saying, hey, thanks, because of you, because of your gift, I got to experience this semester, right? So this is a really fun way that they use their scholarship stories for donor stewardship purposes. Another example here that I really love comes from our friends at the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. So this is a very interesting one because they actually used storytelling to perform their mission. So how they did that was they actually have one of their focus areas, which is public health. So during the pandemic, they actually recognized that a lot of the people in their community were experiencing vaccine hesitancy, and they had, a lot of questions about just COVID in general. And normally, when something like this might happen, they would host a town hall meeting and they'd invite all of their community to come and bring their questions and answer it in real time. However, we all know with the nature of the pandemic, we weren't all in the same room together at one time. So they had to find a different solution to get this education and awareness out there. So what they did is they actually asked the children in their community to submit their biggest questions about COVID-19, about the vaccine, really just about everything that was happening in the world. And they ended up getting 40 questions. And then they went ahead and they sent those over to trusted doctors in their community. They then created just one YouTube video where they had the kid asking the question and the doctor watching the question and answering it. This was really a compelling video, and the way they put it together with their editing was so wonderful. And when they sent it out to their community, they actually found that it resulted in over 1,000 more people getting vaccinated at their 30 local pop-up clinics. So just a really interesting way to actually capture video and use it for education, awareness, and really to perform your actual mission. Another great one to share today comes from our friends at the Arbor Day Foundation. We've been working with them for quite some time now. And as you can imagine, they have a lot of volunteer experiences of people actually planting trees, boots on the ground work. They actually are really wildly successful in collecting content at those tree planting ceremonies, really from that they end up using to either recruit more volunteers or to find corporate sponsors or to write grants to get more corporate funding, right? So what we love about how they set up their campaigns is that they are so hyper organized. So they have hundreds of collection campaigns just throughout the last fall here, and they sort them by each sponsor, by their date, and by the location. So because they are so organized and because they're so on top of how they're going to collect the stories, they have able to get over 5,000 stories just last fall. So those submissions just came from 2023, which has really been a great way that they can use those stories all year long as now we're in fall of 2024. So we'll see how great they do this year as well. But it's just a great way of showing capturing those volunteer experiences and using them for recruitment as well as for recruitment of more new sponsors as well. All right, so those are some really interesting, innovative examples from our storytellers. I imagine some of you might now be thinking, hey, those are some great ideas, and I have some new ideas, but how do I even get started? So really want to make sure I leave you with some strategies to actually start collecting your stories. So let's dive in. The first thing that I recommend when it comes to story collection is to really create an atmosphere that will generate a story collection domino effect. So at your in-person events, maybe at your volunteer events, maybe even at your programs, if you meet in person, you might have an area that you usually deem a photo booth. But we actually recommend, why don't you change the language there and actually go call it a story booth. Set up some prompts that people can answer. Set up an iPad where people can record why they're supporting you today, what they're doing here in the community, the difference that you're making. This is going to generate a domino effect naturally, because when people start seeing other people taking photos, taking videos, and submitting their stories, they're going to say, hey, I need to make sure that I get over there and do that. That looks like a lot of fun. Some fun ways that you can really equip your attendees is by having maybe some fun props. This is actually a screenshot, or this is a photo from one of the conferences that we've attended. That's my colleague, Danielle. She's showing off how great the story booth is. But we also, we just want to recommend that when you are thinking about a story booth, don't worry too much about it looking perfect. Don't worry too much about the background being perfect. Really kind of the fun aspect or the authenticity behind the actual story booth is what's going to bring people in and make them want to share their story. But if you think that just generating a natural domino effect might just be one step too far for your nonprofit at the time or right now, then we say, why don't you designate a content collection champion at your next event? Wounded Warrior Homes, they did this at their annual golf tournament. They had one volunteer that was available at the registration as well as at one of the holes at their golf event, just asking people if they could snap photos, if they would let them know why they were participating in the event today. And they actually were able to collect 240 photos and videos just from that event that one day. One thing that I like to recommend when it comes to this strategy of content collection champion is consider your champion perhaps to be a volunteer. I think we often have staff members that were like, oh, we'll just have them take photos and videos while they're doing all of these other things like running registration, or maybe they're the person who's got to refill the cooler, something like that. We really recommend that you have one volunteer where their specific job is just to collect photos and videos. That's really the way that you're going to be certain that the job will get completed and won't just fall through the cracks. Because naturally your staff members will have other fires that they'll need to put out at your events, right? You've all been there. We all can understand that. All right, when it comes to collecting great stories, we actually like to recommend that a great story comes from a great question. So why is that? And that is because not everyone is a natural born storyteller. Not everyone knows exactly where to start or exactly what to say when they're put in front of a camera. So it's really essential to kind of move beyond simple open-ended questions and instead ask targeted questions, maybe a question that's going to elicit the type of emotion you're looking for. So for example, instead of something like, tell us your story, instead look for a more targeted question like, how did our organization help you overcome the challenges you were facing? Right? If that really is going to get the answer, a little bit deeper answer, a little bit more emotional answer, that's going to actually inform something you can use later. Similarly, when you're talking to volunteers, instead of just saying, tell us about the volunteer work you do, that kind of question could elicit maybe sort of a, well, I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this. But that's not really what you're asking, right? Instead, you might want to ask, tell us about the first time you volunteered with us, and how did that make you feel? And specifically for this presentation today, I told you I want to tell you even more examples of all the different community stories you can tell. So I actually have prompts for each type of community story that I'm going to share with you today. So this will be my first time sharing this, so I hope you enjoy these slides. But let's see, if you are looking to talk to your program participants specifically, here are 3 really great prompts. Where would you be today without this organization? Who at this organization has helped you the most? And what gap does this organization fill in our community? So these are 3 different examples that are going to elicit very different answers. Some are going to be more personal. Some are going to be more aspirational. How are you going to fill this gap in this community? That's something where you're going to say, well, long term, this is what I see for our future. So these are great prompts specifically for your program participants. Next, let's talk about your volunteers, right? The volunteers for many of you, are probably the ones really the heartbeat of your organization, really doing all the boots on the ground work. So some things that you might want to ask them. How does volunteering with this organization make you feel? Right? I already mentioned the feelings back on the other slide, but really asking people, what is it about this volunteering with us that what does it make you feel is such a powerful way. Also, you could say, what's the most rewarding part about volunteering with this organization? You might actually find some answers that you didn't necessarily think of as somebody who works on staff. You might find that they're finding some other things really rewarding about the experience. And then I love this one. What is one thing you've learned since you started volunteering that you wouldn't otherwise know? So Chris mentioned that we talk a lot about ethical storytelling here at MemoryFox. And I think sometimes when you take the chance to ask somebody about something they've learned, maybe you might learn that they had maybe a stigma that they've overcome, or maybe they've had a stereotype that they no longer believe. You know, that's something that they learned from your volunteering experience, and they just otherwise wouldn't have been a part of that. All right, specifically for your staff members, just like before, what's the most rewarding part of working with our organization, right? It's likely that your staff members work with you for very specific reasons. They probably have a very specific reason they were drawn to your mission. Have you ever asked them, and have you ever captured it on camera? Also, another great prompt is, what is the toughest decision you've had to make in your department at your organization? So this is an interesting one because I think it could be very easy to display your program, like your biggest program or your mission in action, but sometimes we don't ask our fundraisers or our marketers or our volunteer managers, well, what's a tough decision you had to make because of maybe a funding related decision? That could be a great way for you to secure new in-kind donations or even a new corporate donor that might be interested in that specific thing that your department is dealing with. And then finally, why are you passionate about your mission? This is something we love to ask our own customers. Just recognizing that the video probably isn't going to play, but I'll send this to you all in the follow-up email. But we actually asked all of you, if you're on our email list, I bet you heard from me several times throughout July and August, but I was asking you, why are you passionate about your mission? And we got these wonderful responses from so many of you. I was going to show you a clip here today, but actually I'll just send it in the follow-up email and you can watch the whole video yourself. But it was really great stuff about all the different types of missions and all the different types of passions that you all have. All right, let's think about our donors. I think sometimes we are so used to asking our donors for, funds or even talking at them and telling them about the improvements we've made, the milestones we've hit, the programs that we've expanded. But why don't we make these more of a two-way conversation? So every chance that you get to talk with a donor in person, or even via email or at an event, one of your fundraising events, perhaps, ask them some of these prompts that can spark really great stories to inspire new donations as well. Like, there's a lot of nonprofits out there. What is special to you about this organization? You might be surprised at some of the answers that you might get from people. Similarly, why did you decide to make a gift to our organization today? That's like really forward, right? Right after they make a donation, email them back that thank you email. Hey, thanks so much. Why did you decide to give to us today? I want to hear more about that. Or you could say, what would you say to someone who's thinking about donating to this organization? So a question like this is great for maybe a recurring donor, somebody who's on maybe your monthly giving list. What would they say to somebody if they went to ask them, what is it about that organization? Why should I give to them? Those are going to be wonderful stories you can share. Similarly, let's talk about board members. So the really great thing about a lot of board members, probably a lot of your organizations here today, your board members have been around for a lot of experiences. They may have witnessed the first client you served, or the first time you built a program or expanded a program. They may have been around for the first big grant that you secured. Especially when you are an organization that might be approaching your 10-year anniversary or your 20-year anniversary or more. these are really great stories that you can share with your community about all the changes over time. And those are so exciting to look back on and learn about. So yeah, some examples might be, what was it about this organization that inspired you to join our board? Or what is the biggest transformation you've witnessed? Or again, why do you think our organization makes our community a better place? These are all just, again, wonderful perspectives that are going to be completely different from the other people in your community. And then finally, in terms of different community members, let's not forget our corporate partnerships. Sometimes our corporate partnerships are actually the longest lasting relationships that we might have as nonprofits, right? You get those recurring sponsors for your events that maybe they were just, maybe they bought a table at your first gala and now they're your presenting sponsor. Let's ask them, what is the change? How did this come about? What is it, for example, what is it about our mission that aligns with your organization's priorities? That's going to be a really interesting way you could write your next fundraising appeal or your next email that is a different type of perspective about why the community comes together. All right. And then my final suggestion when it comes to asking or to collecting great stories is to just not be afraid to ask. So I love this example from Wreaths Across America. They, if you're not aware of them, they actually do one annual wreath laying ceremony on the graves of fallen soldiers. And they do that on the second Saturday of December every single year. But the really interesting thing about their mission is that they're able to do this at thousands of cemeteries in one day. And they really, as you can probably imagine, when you have thousands of cemeteries participating in one event, you aren't able to have staff members everywhere. So they have to leverage their volunteers or else they're not going to get any content. So what they do is in 2023, this past wreath laying day, they actually were able to collect over 8,000 photos and videos from over 1,000 different people across the nation. And you can actually see that is a photo of me and my husband. We did participate last year. So one thing that I always love to say when it comes to this key about not being afraid to ask is that's why they got so much content. They let their volunteers know before, during, after. We really want you to take photos. We really want you to record you laying your wreaths. And this is something that is so important to us so we can let more people know about our mission and we can let more people know about this volunteer experience. So they asked and they asked and they asked again. And just to wrap up my portion of today's presentation, I do want to take a moment and say that I bet some of you on this call might be now saying, well, what do I do if the people I serve have sensitive stories that they might not want to share? That was a question we actually were getting a lot last year, and we decided to put together a report where we could see if this was a recurring trend. And we actually found that 58% of nonprofit professionals say that they struggle with wanting to collect stories from their community while doing no harm. So while avoiding re-triggering their community or re-traumatizing their community from some of the things that they have experienced, or even using words that could exploit them. So today, I don't have time to go into all those strategies, but I do teach a session. We teach sessions here at MemoryFox about ethical storytelling as well. So like Chris mentioned at the top of the hour, if you're interested in checking out the report, you can go ahead and scan this, or I'll drop a link in the chat. But highly recommend, or definitely check back in on our website for when we have ethical storytelling sessions coming up. And just to wrap up, my portion here with storytelling, I'm so excited to hear from Jessica. I don't know if you can tell how excited I am, but if anybody here on the call is interested in learning more about MemoryFox, please stick around to the end. I'll share a little bit more information. Or if you want to scan that goodie bag, it's full of resources. It really is a goodie bag full of resources. And we will offer you a 10% back donation if you become a MemoryFox storyteller. So go ahead or email me anytime, but go ahead and scan that and you can book a time with us to get that discount. And now over to Jessica.
All right, I will go ahead and see how my screen share does. And all right. So on my end, it's looking live. Carly, can you give me like a thumbs up? Excellent. All right. So I am super excited to be chatting with everybody here today about the Google Ad Grant. So Carly just did a really great job taking you through why storytelling, what types of stories, how do you even gather stories. But I'm sure that probably a lot of you in the audience are still thinking like, okay, this is great, but how, now that we have these great stories, how do we get more people to see them? How do we expand that reach? And so I think one of the really cool tools that is available to nonprofits is the Google Ad Grant. So I'm going to start off by doing a quick run through of the Google Ad Grant, and then I'm going to dive really into the nitty gritty of like how search ads work, how you need to be setting up your website, and then wrap up with a couple of examples of clients who were successful, including a client who runs some ads for a storytelling collection. So I'm going to start by just diving in with the ad grant. So the Google Ad Grant is a program from Google that provides up to $10,000 per month in what I call Google Search Ads credits. So another way you could think of this is kind of like a gift card that you can spend on Google Ads, and it's worth up to $10,000 per month. And so the reason to run something like the Google Ad Grant would be so that you can get results like you are seeing here in this image. So I searched help stray animals on my desktop, and I was served some results for the Atlanta Humane Society. So, I first of all, I'm in Atlanta, so that is why I was given the Atlanta Humane Society. But if I was in, let's say, Blacksburg, Virginia, where I used to live, I would much more likely get the Humane Society for that county. And you can see that they've chosen to highlight a few things. They've got stray or lost animals right here in the headline, so I know that I'm in the right spot. You can see they've got their locations and hours, they've got donate today, they've got adopt a pet, all these different things that folks who are searching for this type of term might be interested in. They've even call us button, which I looked on my desktop computer, but if I had looked on my mobile device, then I could hit that button and be put in touch with their team right away. So that is what the ad grant allows you to do. It's to appear at the top of search results or among the search results in the moment that supporters or potential supporters of your organization are searching for topics that are relevant to you. So with our clients, we will use the Google Ad Grant in a number of ways. So highlighting donation opportunities. This might be a good overlap with some of the donation stories that Carly was talking about earlier. Promoting upcoming events is a huge one. And I think a video of maybe a previous event or of constituents really getting a lot of benefit out of your events. Those can really help your landing page perform well. Volunteer recruitment is another thing that we often apply the ad grant towards. So we will run ads when our organizations need more manpower. The other thing that's like a slight twist on that we'll sometimes do is sometimes organizations have job openings, and they will also promote those via the Google Ad Grant. And then the last one, which is a very broad category, is this general topic of growing awareness. So making sure your mission is getting in front of people who would be likely to support it, doing things like gathering emails, gathering phone numbers, potentially gathering stories, things like that, that may be a little bit harder to quantify in terms of like concrete nonprofit outcomes, but that still build this organization for good that you're working in. So that is a little bit about what the Google Ad Grant is. In order to be successful with the Google Ad Grant, there are a few skills that you're going to want to learn how to do. So I'm going to start with the first one, which is keyword research. So when I say keyword research, it's worth kind of taking one step back and understanding how Google reads a page, because that's how Google is going to understand what is relevant. So Google doesn't read a page like visually like a human does, right? Like Google doesn't have eyes, it's a robot. So instead, it looks at how web content is coded, and it has a few on-page signals that it uses to understand what a page is about. So the on-page signals, and I'll show you an example in just a second, we'll break it down, include things like headings, so like your H1s, H2s, H3s, the text on your web page, any alt text. Google's not great at reading or understanding images just yet. My guess is that that will actually improve over the next like 5 years with AI and everything else that's coming out, but at the moment it's a little dicey with that. And then links and anchor text also help Google understand how different concepts on your website relate to each other. Google is smart, so it understands keywords. It also understands variations on that keyword. So when you are doing keyword research, you want to first be looking at the page that you are thinking about running ads to. So I'm going to kind of show you a difference. So this is how humans see a page, right? And the target keyword for this page, this is a guide that we have on the Getting Attention site. I can also drop it in the chat a little bit later because this eligibility guide is also helpful if you're thinking about applying for the Google Ad Grant. But we have this target keyword, which is apply for Google Ad Grants, meaning somebody is going to search this and they're going to see this page. This is how a human sees it. And this is how Google sees it. So we've got alt text. I hovered over the image. I also typed it out here just because this is a little small. So learn about how to apply for Google Ad Grants in this guide. You can also see this is coded as an H1. And so it's how to apply for Google Ad Grants. Get approved in 4 easy steps. We've got text. So after completing the Google Grant application process, this is another variation on this keyword that people might be searching. You'll receive 10,000 per month to spend on ads. And then links. So we've got this 4 steps to apply for Google Grants. We also, again, just a little bit extra, we've got some headings. How do I get a Google Grant? And then this is one other thing I wanted to call out on this page. There is a CTA that stands for call to action, and it says need help applying for Google Ad Grants. Reminder, this is coded as an image. Right now, Google can't read images. However, this is also an important step when you are page because it signals a next step to your users based on your search intent. And we're going to talk about how you can determine what your user search intent is in just a little bit. But this is also a link to, like in this case, our consultation page. So Google will begin to understand what types of users are going to take next actions, where users are likely to go. All of these things are beneficial when we start to build out an advertising strategy to get people to take the actions that you want them to take. So next step in keyword research. We've taken a look at our landing page and we're kind of understanding, okay, so there are some important signals that we need to make sure the keywords are featured in order for Google to understand that the page is relevant to these keywords. Now we're going to look at some of the keywords' own metrics. So there are kind of 2 approaches you could take. You could use a tool like Google Keyword Planner. This is something that is free. It's available in your Google Ads account, your Google Ad Grant account, and it uses Google's own data. So there's something beneficial about that because you are getting it sort of straight from the source. And it could give you insights about your own website. So you can punch your website in and it will tell you sort of what Google already sees your site as relevant for, which is helpful. I also recommend, though, supplementing the data that's in Keyword Planner with some data in tools like Moz. For advertising specifically, SEMrush or SpyFu might be a little bit better because they have some paid data, but these are third-party tools. They have some free tiers. They're a little limited, so just know you may be only able to search like a certain number of keywords per day, or they may only give you up to, 5 responses. I wouldn't recommend anyone on here just go out and immediately buy these tools, but they can be a good supplement. The reason why is because they let you search for competitors. I think a lot of times nonprofits don't necessarily think of themselves as having competitors, but there are similar organizations doing what you do, trying to show up on the same keywords. And so it's useful to be able to see, okay, what types of keywords are they going after? What does their ad text look like? Have they thought of something that we haven't thought of yet? And could we use that for our own advertising strategy? So these are going to be some of the tools that you're going to want to use for your keyword research. Now I want to dive into the metrics to evaluate. So when you are looking at keywords, there are going to be a couple of different things that you're going to want to look at. You're going to want to look at the volume. So how many people are searching for this term per month? You're going to want to look at the competition. So this is reflective of how many other advertisers or other organizations are trying to show up for this keyword. You're going to want to look at the cost per click. That is kind of how Google calculates that $10,000 per month spend. We'll dive into what the Google Ads auction looks like in just a second. And then you're also going to want to be paying attention to relevance. And that is another way of speaking to that search intent that I talked about a little bit earlier. And search intent is going to be really important as we think about how to make your ads more effective. So we're going to talk about search intent in greater detail in just a second, but I remember I said that the cost is sort of determined by the Google Ads auction. So in order to show an ad, Google goes through this process that is called the Google Ads auction. And what it does is, like, let's say I typed in how to apply for Google Ad Grants, or to make it more relevant for some of the nonprofits here, maybe I'm searching animal shelter near me, right? Google is going to make a snap decision about whose ad to show based on a few different things. So first of all, that amount of competitiveness, like I said. So how many total advertisers are there trying to show up? bid is another one. So this is how much the advertiser has said that getting on this advertising spot is worth to them. It's worth noting in the Google Ad Grant, there are some restrictions. We could talk about that more in the Q&A if people have questions, but just for your kind of understanding right now, that's one of the levers that's a little harder to pull as a nonprofit using an ad grant account. Ad quality is a huge one. So what this means is the text that you're seeing, so you can see an example of an ad we created for one of our clients has got the text in here, is it really closely tied to the text of the keyword? Ideally, the keyword should be featured somewhere in the headline, somewhere in the text, possibly in the links, or there should be a very close variation of it, right? And then the landing page quality and how well it matches what people are looking for, that intent is going to be important. So in an ad grant account, like I said, the easiest levers for you to control as you are trying to kind of outsmart the Google Ads auction is going to be your ad quality, making sure it's really closely tied to the keyword and to the search intent, and the landing page quality. So how do we pick good landing pages for our ads? How do we make sure that we have the strongest content possible? This is a question that I get, and a common sort of follow-up question to this is like, do we need to be creating brand new landing pages for every single ad campaign we run? I think that's a common misconception. The best landing pages for your campaigns are going to be landing pages that feature the keywords that you are trying to appear on or a close variation. They should have a clear call to action that is connected to the search intent. So as an example, if I search donate to the Red Cross and I get served an ad for the Red Cross, first of all, great. You know, high chance that I'm going to click on that ad because I'm going to say this is very relevant to me. If I get to the page and I can't find the button to donate, there's no sort of like donate today or anything like that, I might just leave without taking any kind of action. So you want to make sure that you are using that clear call to action connected to the search intent. And then the last thing is you want to make sure your landing page has a good user experience. So it needs to load quickly, clear navigation. Ideally, ideally it wouldn't be just like a big wall of text. Ideally, you're breaking it up with videos, with pictures, with some of these other things that help tell the story of who you are without just, 10 paragraphs of text content that people may or may not read. Usually, when we are working with our clients, we actually will typically use existing landing pages. The reason for that is these pages already have some history with Google. So Google already kind of understands what the page is about, may have some ideas about the page already. And that helps us get results for our ads quickly compared to creating brand new pages for every campaign. So as you're thinking through kind of like how do we bring together, this storytelling stuff, you might be like, oh, I know. We're going to make a new page. It's going to say stories, whatever. What would be better would be maybe on your programs pages, having some of these stories that you just add to the page that already exists and running ads to it, things like that. I already talked a little bit about Google Keyword Planner. Another tool, this is more for the organic side of search rather than the paid side of search, but Google Search Console is another really useful tool. Both of these are free, and that can help you get an idea of what keywords Google already recognizes on the page. If you're looking at the page, if you're looking at your site in these tools and you're going, these don't really have much to do, if anything, to do really with what we consider our mission to be, or like a common situation that we'll see for our clients who are kind of new when we punch in Keyword Planner is there may be like a ton of keywords for a fundraiser that they did like 4 years ago that is still hanging out, and these things are very persistent. Usually, in my experience, what that means is that the organization has not done a ton of work to think about what their main keywords are, like what they want to show up for. And then, most importantly, are those keywords appearing in those page signals that teach Google that that's something that the page should be about, that's something that's relevant to the organization, etc. I think a great tip for anybody who is on here, especially if you are like maybe a small to mid-sized nonprofit, you're not maybe the like American Cancer Society, but you're well known, you have donors, etc. I would be looking at an organization like American Cancer Society or some of these organizations that do something similar to you, but that are really where you would love to be, like when lay your head on the pillow at night and you're daydreaming about or night dreaming about where you want to be in 10 years. Like these are the model organizations. Take a look at their website and take a look at their headings on their pages. Take a look at what's listed on their buttons. Do they have big visible buttons that make it really easy to donate? Do they have like little links, things like that? I'm a huge fan of kind of doing research with organizations similar to you, seeing what they're doing and then copying some of that. So I have been talking a lot. I want to go ahead and break down an example of how these things relate. So how do we pull this advertising strategy that I've been talking about? How do we kind of pull all of that together into something successful? So I am using an example. This is a real screenshot from Google. So I searched donate to Glacier National Park and luckily was served an ad for one of our clients. This is the Glacier National Park Conservancy. And you can see they've got this nice big ad. It appears above the organic result. And I'm going to kind of break down what we are looking at here. So first of all, we can tell from this donate term that somebody who is searching for this, they already know what they want. They are looking to make a donation, right? And so they've got a few different things that they are linking to. First of all, of course, they have their giving page. So give to Glacier. That's closely related to this concept of donate. So Google's going to say, okay, great, understood. And then they've got even some enticing text here, like all proceeds support the park, support it by becoming a donor, all donations. Again, notice that all of these are in the search term. But they've also highlighted a couple of other links that I want to call out right here. So the Glacier National Park Conservancy has a shop. So they have their clearance sale. Again, we've got clearance here, we've got clearance here, and we've got clearance over here. So again, anything you're putting in your ads, you want to have that echoed on the landing page. We've also got like backcountry hiking maps. So these are all different opportunities to drive revenue for the organization. So someone may have started with a donation, but they may actually be more interested if maybe they're going to Glacier National Park. They may be more interested in buying hiking maps. These are all kind of similar search intents. They drive revenue for the organization. But the other thing I want to call out is there is a second chunk that we had been kind of ignoring to that point, which is just this more generic term, Glacier National Park, is also featured in the keyword. And so they also feature some links that are designed to capture this awareness audience. So as you're thinking through where your various stories belong, you might be thinking of, okay, this type of story is a great one to demonstrate who we are, what we do for someone who doesn't know a lot about us. This other story might be a little bit better to tell to somebody who's very familiar with our work. Maybe it really dives into the nitty gritty of how we are, different, how our approach works better, etc. But you can see the same thing here. Park activities. Again, we see park activities. And if I were to continue scrolling on this page, you can see there's camping, there's hiking, there's biking, there's all sorts of things that you can do in the national park. The last example that I want to show is one that is really, really actually quite connected to some of the topics we are talking about today. Secretly, I don't think this organization is a MemoryFox user, but they probably should be because the MemoryFox stories look pretty nice. But we do have a client that we work with called Georgians for a Healthy Future. So they basically help to expand access to healthcare coverage for folks in the state of Georgia. So they provide a lot of information for these various programs. And they have a Share Your Story campaign that they run. And so I actually, again, I literally searched this morning and was served this ad, which is great. And this Share Your Story was highlighted. And so what it does is it takes me to this page, says tell your healthcare story. And again, they are trying to gather stories, both the uplifting, like, yes, I was able to get healthcare access. This was amazing. This was beneficial. But even some of the challenging ones, like, hey, I was stuck without healthcare because I didn't know that XYZ deadline had passed, or I had to jump through all these hoops and it was really difficult. Like all of these different things sort of help to tell the story of their organization. And this type of link was actually pretty popular. So I did some digging into the data of like, well, how many people were actually looking at this? We were running ads, but were people actually clicking on it? And it did. It got over 1,300 clicks and it had a higher than 13% click-through rate. Just to put some perspective on the click-through rate, because I think that one might not hit with you unless you're in ads data every day. A typical click-through rate in sort of the search industry, it's like 2 to 3%. And in an ad grant account, there is a slightly higher bar. So the minimum is kind of 5% click-through rate across all your ads. So we would consider 10% to be like an excellent click-through rate, and anything above that is really stellar. So that means 13% of the people who saw this ad chose to click on this link and learn more about sharing their story. One other thing that I think is kind of interesting that they're doing as well is they also have an option to have people write their story. So if someone maybe is a little bit shy about being on camera, they could also do some writing and kind of submit their story that way. So hopefully going through this has kind of given you an idea of how ads work and how by tying in the relevancy to the page, the relevancy to the keyword, and then the keyword sort of relevancy to your organization, what you can start to do is gather this larger audience who can contribute these stories, who can become more engaged with you over time, and you can kind of continue to grow your audience and kind of grow your impact that way. All right, so I think we are going to move to a Q&A after this. Am I right, Carly? All right, then I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen.
Wow,
Awesome, really great
that
stuff.
was so good.
Yeah, so good. That was really, really helpful. Um, so we did get a bunch of questions, so I'm going to go through them. Some are more towards Carly's part, and then some are a little more towards yours. So we'll go ahead and start. This is from Nicolina Miller. This is for Carly, but I guess Jessica, you used to work in education too, so I think you may have some insights. Have you had any negative feedback about identifying the students that are actually like on a scholarship? Nicolina is coming from an independent nonprofit middle school where financial aid and scholarships is not broadcasted, for privacy reasons. I love the idea of testimonials, but how do I do this sensitively for an organization like ours? I guess we'll start with Carly.
Sure. Well, I will answer it, even though Chris, I know that you know a great answer to this question too, and that is you really can't share anybody's testimonial without their consent. So if in terms of the way you worded the question, are we getting negative feedback? We, what we do here at MemoryFox, we always ask consent up front. So that's not a situation we necessarily would find ourselves in, but we do recognize that of course, when it comes to minors or when it comes to stories that involve, I think you said middle school. So yeah, definitely like in a minor situation, that's something where the parents would also have to be involved with the consent. We do have some strategies that we kind of recommend that maybe collecting that consent up front. For example, if you are in a group setting, maybe part of maybe when they come to accept their scholarship, maybe when they sign their scholarship letter, if that's something that you want to include or something you want to maybe point out as part of a stipulation, that is something you could think about doing. You also could just say, hey, down the line, would you be interested in submitting a story later? Could we reconnect maybe in a year after your story or after you have maybe graduated from this program or something along those lines? But definitely we would never recommend that you share anybody's story without them knowing or without them giving a final approval for that story. I hope that helps.
Yeah, Jessica, anything to add?
I think I don't have a ton of experience in the K-12 realm, but I can tell you about like just a personal experience that I had because I was on full scholarship for college. And one of the folks who ran my scholarship did actually put out a call for video submissions for thanking donors. And like that was fully opt-in by merit of the fact that they sent me an email saying, "Hey, please do this," but I didn't have to. So I chose to, and the only other thing that might be like relevant to my experience there is like it was sent very directly like to the donor. It wasn't like they put it on their Facebook page and put it on their website and whatever. I think like making sure you're really clear with folks like how it's going to be used is probably also going to be something relevant there. But I can say like the experience was positive, and they like stitched together all these different students like experience, and like this is
Positive,
what the
yeah.
scholarship did for us, and like it was a very cute little video. They showed us it afterwards, and it was like a big thank you for the donor. So um I think also as a student it felt nice to feel
Be
like somebody
heard,
who,
yeah, to like be
yeah,
heard.
Yeah,
who made
yeah.
like a very like life-changing gift essentially to me, that I was kind of able to say thank you in a personal way. So I would call the experience positive, but I do think being clear on who it's going to be shared with, what purposes it's going to be used for is
Definitely.
Yeah,
crucial.
always. Very cool. All right, now this is I'm going to combine two questions that we got in the chat. These are kind of both for you, Jessica. So are there any workshops that we can join to learn how to use Google Grants? I'm sure you guys offer some things.
Yeah.
We've been accepted for it, but we can't figure out how to use it. So that's question number one. And number two, do you have any resources or suggestions for doing keyword research for bilingual audiences? in
Ooh, good
bilingual
question.
locations.
Yeah. As far as workshops go, I mean, I'm a little biased. Always say that getting attention is doing a lot of different webinars all around the nonprofit space. So you can feel free to tune in. I usually try and talk to folks about a lot of different potential applications of it. So
Do you
that
have a
would be one
newsletter that people
suggestion.
can join?
Do we have a newsletter? Yes, we do. I let me let me look for the sign up page on our site, but yes, we do. And then the other thing, if you want to go to the Getting Attention website, we do have a ton of articles that kind of break down the early phases. I think as far as more like tactical practical trainings, Google does have a free one that they offer that is just Google Ads training. I'll give that an asterisk. It will teach you the core like pieces of how Google Ads works. So if you're truly like, I don't know up from down here, like I am truly lost, that will give you at least enough to start with. I will say that there's value in working sometimes with folks who kind of have a lot of experience in these types of accounts. Because the ad grant specifically is not as immediately plug and play user friendly as the paid accounts, probably because Google's not getting paid. So
Right.
Google's donating their own money to it. So that would be my recommendation there. And as far as resources for doing bilingual keyword research and for bilingual audiences, the cool thing about Keyword Planner is that if you have bilingual content on your website, it should begin to pick up on that. Another thing you can play around with, not sure what their organization is or kind of where they might be based, but you could try if you, for example, maybe are doing, if you're like a multinational organization, you can also just set your location that it'll be doing the keyword research for to whatever country or whatever area. If you're, let's say, you're in like the US or you're in Canada, so you're trying to do like Spanish and French, then I would just begin searching, what you perceive your core keywords to be in Spanish or French or what have you, and start from there. Google is pretty good at like learning different languages, so as long as your website has the content to back it up, you should be able to do kind of both of those. And then I think, you know, staff or your sort of organization is really going to be the best source of truth on like any cultural considerations you might need, et cetera. With stuff like that, if you were thinking about bringing on a vendor, I would really strongly recommend that you bring on a vendor who kind of specializes in bilingual outreach because like, I mean, I know in Spanish, the classic example is like pregnant and embarrassed or whatever. So making sure that you're not just doing those one-to-one translations in Google Translate so that your
Right.
meaning is actually getting across properly would be beneficial.
Cool. All right. This next one is for Carly, and this is from Joni. As an environmental nonprofit working to prevent eco damage from a new mine, we struggle to find stories that aren't fear-mongering.
Hmm.
Do you have any recommendations in terms of storytelling, maybe that's more positive or uplifting? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That is an interesting question. And I actually remember we actually put a question pretty much exactly the same in the ethical storytelling report. I wish I remember exactly everything people said about it, but I remember one tip, and that was that we kind of have come up with this idea of sometimes you can write the story of an object or of maybe not a person that's being affected, maybe to kind of uh, step around maybe some of those maybe fear mongering things, but instead you could talk about, well, what would it be like if there were, I think you said it was environmental of some sort, but maybe
A
maybe you could,
mine is being built, it seems like.
oh, okay.
When I used to be in Alaska, that was always a big problem.
Maybe you could tell the story of like the trees that could have grown here or what they could have done, and maybe the lives they could have impacted through through nature, through growing a better ecosystem, something like that. Kind of being a little bit more creative about where you start your story. Um, if you're thinking that that might sound like too abstract or like too hard, I do recommend just go to ChatGPT, put in some ideas, and you might be kind of happy with some of the brainstorming that it spits back to you, right? You can that can be a good starting point for you to think of maybe some creative ideas, especially if you say, I need to put a positive spin on this. I think that's worth a try too.
Yeah, and talking positively, I think about how beautiful it is. Like I could imagine like anthropomorphic, like in Alaska, right? The fish would be affected. I believe
Yeah,
it had to do with like the salmon, like how they're affected and the bears are affected, but not in, but like do it in like a fun way. Maybe there's like
yeah,
a cheeky way to do it that makes people feel positive.
Right. And that's a good, I love that this question was asked because it's a good reminder that like people really want to give to causes that they think are going to do a long-term solution, like a real fixing of a problem. And sometimes when you do stories that are fear-mongering or are doing, in the case of like actually working with communities, like you're exploiting them, people kind of just want it off their screen and they maybe never want to think about it again. But if you are committed to kind of figuring out a positive way to speak about your mission, I do think that will help you in the long term.
Cool. Well, I apologize we didn't get to every single question. But I'm sure that we'll be doing more content in the future. Feel free to join and we'll try to get to all the questions next time. But thank you all for coming. This is really nice to be able to host this. Carly, Jessica, you guys did an amazing job. Jessica, thank you. It was very, very interesting and helpful to us too.
Yeah, I wrote down a lot.
Yeah, I look forward. We're going to try to find ways to partner because I think this is really cool stuff.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Always fun to hang out with a new audience, and it was awesome seeing all the questions come in from the MemoryFox
Yeah.
folks.
Cool.
Yeah,
All right,
so
we're going to
we'll,
shift gears
yeah.
real quick and Carly's going to do a quick spiel about MemoryFox and then Jessica is going to do one as well. And so we'll go ahead and launch into it.
Yeah, I'll
Carly?
just do a real quick overview of kind of the pain points that we address here at MemoryFox, and how we might be able to help you with a storytelling plan. So I always kind of like to start off this little section by saying, if someone asks you, what is your mission? Can you actually show them? Sometimes having those visuals, you can say your mission, you probably say it all the time. You probably know exactly the words that are on your website, right, Jessica? But you might not have maybe a great video or a photo or a testimonial of sorts that's really going to show it. And I would say, well, if you don't have those, well, what's exactly stopping you? And we find that when we meet with nonprofit professionals like you, we find that they kind of have one or two of really four pain points. There's kind of four things that you might be experiencing. So number one, maybe you think collecting content from your community is like pulling teeth. Like it's just something that is so hard to do. You don't have a great way to do it. You could be thinking, well, organizing my content, once I get it, is so frustrating. It's so time consuming. And then I never know where anything is and nothing's organized. You might think, well, we need a more efficient and modern way to actually share our story. Maybe you have content and you're just not really sure how to effectively share it in the modern world. Or you could say, we already heard about this when I talked about the ethical storytelling report, but you might just say, well, I struggle with collecting community stories ethically. But the good thing about MemoryFox is that we actually built a platform that addresses all these pain points head on. So I'm going to talk about each one a little bit just for a second, and then would really love if you would connect with us later. But one thing that we know is absolutely true. Chris and I talk about this all the time, but we know that nonprofits like you've really been given an impossible task of competing in this big attention economy while also remaining true to ethical standards for authenticity and storytelling. So for-profit companies, they just don't have to play by the same rules as you, right? You are being held to such a high standard, so we want to recognize that. Which is exactly like I said when I showed this stat earlier from the ethical storytelling report. So we see you, you're not alone. We tried to build a platform that is going to help you address that exact problem. So first, here's how we help with collection. The way MemoryFox works, you build a branded campaign and you distribute it directly to the person you want to get the story from. So if you want to scan that link, you can see how it would work from the storyteller perspective, but they're simply going to click the link or scan the QR code, and then they're going to be prompted to submit pictures, videos, or written testimonials. The really cool thing about this is they don't need to download. There's no login that is required for any of this, and we do capture the consent up front, so you're always sure you can use that story. In terms of organizing, once people submit their stories to you, they're going to populate in the MemoryFox story bank where you and your team will have access to be able to tag them, sort them, do whatever you need to do to stay organized and keep it in a way that's going to make sense for your team. You also do get unlimited storage. And then in terms of sharing, we are integrated with Canva. We have a video editor. We have a lot of tools that are really going to help you actually use that content and share it out in ways that are going to make sense for your community. So it could be printing your annual report, it could be social media posts, could be email campaigns. We have a lot of different tools that help you really execute on the sharing. And just as another really to hit it home in terms of the way that MemoryFox is an ethical storytelling platform, we have all these features. So I already mentioned the consent, but first and foremost, the way our pricing works is equitable. So it's based on the way your nonprofit is structured. It's based on your revenue. It's really based on the way you're planning to use the tool, because we really do believe that every nonprofit has great stories to tell. Some other wonderful things, we offer privacy. You know, we never own your content. That is all your content that gets submitted to you. We also have, you know, accessibility. So this is really a great way where people can share their stories when and where they're comfortable, instead of bringing them into a room and putting them down in an interview chair. Also, we always recommend, well, everything that is within MemoryFox is fully customizable, so you're able to use the strength-based language that makes sense for your community. This is the same slide as before. You're welcome to scan the goodie bag, book a time with us, get that 10% donation, or email me at carly@memoryfox.net. And now back over to you, Jessica.
Great. Go ahead and share a little bit about what's under the hood at Getting Attention. So we are Google Ad Grant Managers. So basically what that means is we can help you at any phase of the Google Ad Grant process. So if you are brand new to the grant, need some help walking through the application, we can help you with that. And then if you already have an ad grant, but maybe you're like, we are really not able to use it effectively, that is kind of the core of what we do. So we keep all of our clients in good standing. We've never lost an ad grant that was under our care. And the way that we do that is through kind of taking on that process of kind of figuring out what to do with the ad grant. A common here from folks in nonprofits. Ad grant seems like a really cool tool, but we've struggled to make it work for us. Or, and sometimes these are really the same complaint, I don't have, you know, tons of hours per week to sink into this. I am wearing a bunch of hats. We've got all sorts of other things going on, and this is kind of the last thing I need on my to-do list. So we take that work off of our client's plate. We handle all of the initial research and initial setup. If folks come to us with an ad grant already in hand, then we're starting out with an initial audit, seeing what's working, what's not working, and then working with the client as well to say, what are your goals? Like, what are you trying to achieve? That is one of the things that makes Getting Attention a little bit different than a lot of ad grant managers in the space. We are very, very conversion focused. So we want to make sure any ad campaign that we're running is connected to a tangible outcome for your nonprofit, whether that is growing your donor base through emails, through phone numbers collected, through donations submitted, whether that is collecting stories like we talked about today, whether that is sourcing volunteers, et cetera. So we handle that initial research and setup, and then we check in on our campaigns every single take care of that ongoing process of optimization. We stay up to date with all of the changes coming down the line from Google, which are frequent and not advertisers. So we take the work of kind of figuring out what's going on there and implement best practices into our account. And then we keep our clients in the loop through a monthly reporting call every single month. So, you know, if you are eligible for the Google Ad Grant, feel free to reach out to me. I can actually, if I stop sharing my screen, I had a different slide with my contact information that I can pull up in just a second. But feel free to reach out to me or to my team. You can also always, you know, connect with me on LinkedIn. I am basically everywhere. But the Getting Attention website, if you're maybe not ready to chat with a person just yet, but you're trying to learn a little bit more, that's going to be a great source for resources for anyone on this call. All right.
Wonderful.
Actually, I'll just drop my email in the chat. That
Yeah,
might be easier.
go ahead. We're all friends here. All right, cool. Well, this was wonderful. Thank you all, for those, especially those who hung out. And we'll see you next time. Take care and have a great day. And thank you all for what you do.